I need to pull you aside for a second. Seriously, just stop whatever you're doing.
Yeah, just pause.
Imagine we are standing right outside the door of your next big interview. You're, wearing your best clothes. You have your portfolio tucked into your arm.
You're feeling good.
Right. You've rehearsed your resume, and you are feeling remarkably good. But right before you turn that handle, I need to share something incredibly uncomfortable with you.
Very uncomfortable.
Because it might just stop you from walking into that room and saying something completely ruinous. I am going to read you 3 exact answers that real project management candidates had given to motivation questions in real high-stakes interviews.
And these are real.
Yeah, these are pulled directly from the book we're exploring today.
Yeah.
And as I read these, I want you, the listener, to honestly ask yourself, have I ever said something like this?
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It really is. Okay, here is answer number 1, word for word. Quote, I have been with my current company for 6 years, and I feel like I have learned everything I can learn there. I am ready for a new challenge, and your company really stood out to me. The culture seems amazing, and I have heard great things about the team. End quote. Think about that one. Sounds pretty standard, right? Let's look at answer number 2.
Go for it.
Quote, honestly, I have always admired this company. You are the leader in the industry, and the opportunity to work here has always been a dream of mine. Plus, the role aligns perfectly with where I want to take my career.
Oh, man.
Right? And finally, answer number 3. Just listen to the tone of this one. Quote, I am looking to move because my current role has become a bit stagnant. There is not a lot of room for growth where I am now, and I feel undervalued. I want to be somewhere that actually recognizes talent.
Yeah, that one's heavy.
It is. Okay, the door's right in front of you. Which of those 3 answers do you think eliminated the candidate on the spot?
All 3 of them.
All 3.
Every single one. I mean, immediate, unrecoverable elimination.
All 3.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is the terrifying reality we have to unpack today.
Yeah.
Because those answers, they sound completely reasonable to the average person.
They do.
They sound honest. They sound thoughtful. The candidates who gave those answers probably walked out of the building, called their partner from the car, and said, I completely nailed it.
Oh, they definitely did.
They asked me why I wanted the job, and I gave a great, passionate answer.
They absolutely thought they nailed it. But in reality, they had just quietly eliminated themselves from a process they probably didn't even realize they were losing.
Wow.
And that, that is the tragedy of the motivation question. You don't get a buzzer sound when you get it wrong.
Right. No red lights flashing.
Exactly. The interviewer just nods, maybe writes something down, and mentally moves you right to the rejection pile.
That is brutal. Well, welcome to our deep dive into episode 6 of the Project Management Interview Series from the Critical Path YouTube channel. Today's focus is titled, Why Your Motivation Answers Are Killing Your PM Interview.
It's a crucial one.
It really is. If you joined us for our last deep dive into episode 5, you know that one completely changed how we think about the first interview question using Domain 1 and the PEAK framework. But today we are going deep into Domain 2, which is motivation questions.
Yeah, we are.
And just a quick suggestion before we really get moving. If you are driving right now, commuting, or maybe in the middle of a heavy workout, that is actually perfect.
The best time for this.
Yeah, this deep dive really benefits from your full, undivided audio attention. No screens required. Just let the road roll by, listen to this conversation, absorb the psychology we are about to break down, and then, honestly, you should probably listen to it again before your next interview.
You will definitely need to listen twice because Domain 2 is, well, it's arguably the most dangerous part of the interview, precisely because of how innocent it appears on the surface.
Okay, let me challenge you on that right away, because to me, motivation questions feel like a massive relief.
Really?
Yeah. They give off this profound illusion of ease, like you've just survived the strategic intensity of Domain 1. You've perfectly executed your selective disclosure. You've laid out your master structure. You are sweating a little bit, but you feel accomplished.
Right, you got through the hard part.
Exactly. And then the hiring manager literally leans back in their chair, maybe smiles, drops their pen on the notebook, and just casually asks, so, why did you apply for this role? I mean, it feels like the icebreaker after the hard stuff.
And that right there is the exact moment the trap springs.
Really? The leaning back.
Yes. Your brain interprets that physical shift in posture, the leaning back, the dropping of the pen, as a break in the evaluation. You think, the technical interrogation is over. Now we're just chatting human to human.
Yeah, I've absolutely done that. You feel the tension leave your shoulders, and you just start talking.
But that instinct to drop your guard is fatal. You have to understand the mechanism of a hiring manager's mind. Motivation questions are not a break from the strategy. They are the absolute deepest part of it.
Wow.
Think about the distinction here. Domain 1 tells the interviewer what you can do. It's your capability, your hard skills, your framework knowledge. But Domain 2 tells them who you are.
Who you are?
Exactly. And who you are dictates how you will behave when the project goes completely off the rails 6 months from now.
So they aren't just making conversation, they're constantly receiving a signal. What exactly is that signal broadcasting?
Hiring managers use these motivation answers to instantly gauge a binary underlying truth about your professional leverage. Are you a high-value candidate who has options in the marketplace, or are you a desperate candidate with nowhere else to go?
Okay, that feels like a remarkably harsh binary, high value or desperate. I mean, is there no middle ground?
In risk assessment, the middle ground is just a slower path to failure. Yeah. A project manager who isn't fundamentally driven by the right things is a massive liability. They don't just fail quietly, you know. They can drag down an entire multi-million-dollar portfolio, alienate key stakeholders, and just destroy team morale.
Right.
So the signal, whether you are high value or desperate, is constantly broadcasting. It's humming in the background of every single word you say, whether you realize it or not. The interviewer doesn't even need to consciously articulate it. They just feel it based on the framing, the word choice, and the subtext of your answer.
This is exactly why we need to diagnose those 3 answers from the cold open in extreme detail. We need to see exactly what signal each of those candidates was accidentally broadcasting.
Let's do it.
Let's start with answer 1. The candidate said, quote, "I have been with my current company for 6 years and I feel like I have learned everything I can learn there." Now, I'm going to push back here. Loyalty is a good thing. 6 years shows you aren't a job hopper.
Sure.
And saying you've learned everything shows ambition. What is the hidden red flag?
We have to unpack the timeline first. 6 years in one company. Now, to the candidate, and maybe to your grandmother, that sounds like they are demonstrating admirable loyalty and stability.
Right.
But remember how hiring managers evaluate high-value candidates in a competitive market? High-value individuals are usually in demand. They are visible. They get recruited away by competitors. They get tapped on the shoulder for new, complex opportunities.
I see where this is going.
So when a hiring manager sees someone who has stayed in one exact place for 6 years without moving, whether voluntarily or because they simply weren't headhunted, it immediately raises a silent question about complacency.
Wait, so the loyalty actually works against them?
It works against them if it isn't framed correctly as a deliberate choice, but it gets worse with the second half of that sentence. I feel like I have learned everything I can learn there.
Which, again, sounds incredibly self-aware.
It sounds self-aware, yeah, but psychologically what it actually communicates is stagnation and passivity. You are effectively telling the interviewer 2 things. First, that you have hit a ceiling and stopped growing.
Okay.
Second, and more damaging, it implies that you rely on the company to feed you knowledge, rather than creating value and finding new complexities to solve yourself.
Oh, like you're waiting for a teacher to give you a lesson?
Exactly. A senior PM doesn't run out of things to learn. They optimize, they innovate, they redefine the processes. So when you say that, you signal that you are running away from a dead end of your own making. You aren't being pulled towards a new, exciting opportunity. You are just trying to escape a room where you have personally run out of air.
Wow. That shifts the perspective completely.
Yeah.
You are fleeing a negative, passive state, not actively pursuing a positive one. Okay, let's look at answer 2. This is the one that physically hurts me to read because it sounds so genuinely, passionately enthusiastic. Quote, "Honestly, I have always admired this company. You are the leader in the industry and the opportunity to work here has always been a dream of mine."
Ouch.
Why is this eliminating people? They are literally complimenting the interviewer.
Because of the underlying subtext of power dynamics and leverage. When you say that, the subtext the hiring manager actually hears is, "You are vastly superior to me. Please pick me."
Oh, no.
Yeah. It instantly signals low value because you're voluntarily putting the company on a massive, untouchable pedestal.
I see what you mean. It is like a vendor walking into a high-stakes contract negotiation and opening the meeting by saying, we desperately need your business to keep our lights on. You are the biggest client we've ever talked to. You have just surrendered every ounce of leverage you had in the room.
That is a phenomenal analogy. You have just handed them all the power. The hiring manager at a top-tier company knows they are the industry leader. They know their stock price is high. They know they have great perks.
Right. You aren't telling them anything new.
Exactly. Stating the obvious doesn't make you look like an interesting high-value catch. It just makes you look like one of the 500 other starry-eyed people in their inbox. And look closely at the word dream. It has always been a dream of mine.
What's wrong with having a dream job? I mean, people say that all the time.
They do, but dreams are for people who cannot have things. It is the language of fantasy, aspiration, and lack. Professionals do not dream about companies. Professionals evaluate companies to see if there is a mutual alignment of capability and vision.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. When you use the language of dreams, you are communicating from a place of deep scarcity. You are saying, I am lucky just to be in this room. A high-value candidate never feels lucky to be in the room. They feel they belong in the room.
Professionals evaluate companies. That is a completely different posture. It completely changes how you sit in the chair. All right, let's look at answer 3. Quote, my current role has become a bit stagnant. I feel undervalued.
This is the most dangerous of the three, by a wide margin, because this candidate has just introduced a negative talk track into the room, and a negative talk track is an absolute undeniable interview toxin.
But I have to stop you here. It is so tempting to say this, especially if it is true.
Sure, it happens.
What if they genuinely are undervalued? What if they're doing the work of 3 PMs and getting paid for half of one? Are they supposed to pretend everything is great?
It might be 100% objectively true, but the moment you utter it, the hiring manager instantly thinks two very specific things. First, if you lack the professional boundaries and discretion to sit here and complain to a total stranger about your current employer, what are you going to say about us when you eventually leave?
Oh, wow. The trust is immediately vaporized.
Completely vaporized. Or worse, what are you going to say about our clients when a project gets tough?
Yeah, you become a flight risk of gossip.
Right. And the second thing they think is even worse, is there actually something wrong with you that your current employer is seeing?
Reversing the blame.
Yes. Are you actually underperforming, difficult to work with, or lacking self-awareness? And that is why you feel undervalued. You have to understand that the hiring manager's primary instinct in an interview is not sympathy.
You aren't your therapist.
No, they are not there to rescue you from a bad boss. Their sole psychological driver is suspicion. They're trying to de-risk a massive financial investment, which is what hiring you is. So if you bring drama, grievances, or unresolved friction into the room, you become a high-risk asset.
This is incredibly heavy because realizing you have been stepping on these landmines without knowing it is a tough pill to swallow. And this feels like a really natural moment to mention something vital for anyone listening.
Definitely.
Recognizing these traps in a vacuum, just listening to us dissect theoretical quotes is one thing. But applying this to your own messy, complicated, non-linear career history is profoundly difficult.
It's the hardest part.
If you are sitting in traffic right now thinking, wait, my resume has a massive 6-year gap, or I actually did leave a toxic, screaming boss, and I have no idea how to explain why I quit without a job lined up, the coaching offer mentioned in the description of this deep dive is exactly what you need.
Yeah, that's what it's there for.
The platform gives you your first 4 sessions completely free. You can actually sit down on a call and work through your specific messy landlines with an expert before you ever set foot in an interview room.
It is invaluable to pressure test your specific story out loud because the nuances of your delivery matter immensely. Which brings us to the actual solution. If those 3 answers are fatal, how do we actually build a motivation architecture that works?
Right. Let's move into the internal versus external motivation framework. The book introduces this concept of 2 dials that you have to tune perfectly. To succeed in domain 2, your answer has to simultaneously communicate internal motivation on one dial and towards 2 motivation on the other. Getting both right amplifies your perceived value exponentially. Getting either one wrong signals desperation. So let's unpack the first dial, internal versus external.
Internal motivation is entirely about what the work itself means to you as an individual practitioner. It is driven by your core professional values, your long-term strategic goals, your identity as a builder, and your desire to master the craft of execution.
It's the stuff inside.
Right. It is the fire inside you that dictates why you do what you do, completely independent of the environment around you.
And so external motivation would be the opposite. It is the salary, the health perks, the brand name on the building, the status of the senior title, or even just the fact that the office is a 10-minute commute from your house.
Yep.
But let me play devil's advocate again here. We all work for money. We all want good benefits. If a company spends millions of dollars touting its amazing campus and its 401k match, why are they suddenly offended when I say I want to work there because of those things? Is it really a crime to want a good salary?
It's not a crime to want it, but it is a strategic error to lead with it in an interview. When you highlight external motivators, you frame yourself as a taker.
A taker. Break down the psychology of that.
A taker is someone who evaluates an opportunity based purely on what they can extract from it. What will this company give me? Hiring managers are terrified of takers, specifically in project management.
Why PM specifically?
Because project environments are inherently volatile and often brutal. There will be weeks where the hours are long, the key stakeholders are furious, the vendor is failing, and the budget is slashed.
We've all been there.
Right. A candidate who is a fair weather PM, someone who is only there for the free lunches, the stock options, and the prestige of the brand name, is going to mentally check out the exact moment the work gets hard and the perks feel insufficient.
Because the external rewards no longer outweigh the internal pain of the job.
Precisely. But a candidate who is internally motivated, someone who genuinely cares about the mastery of project execution, who loves untangling complex stakeholder messes, will sustain themselves through that brutality, because solving the problem is tied to their professional identity, not just their paycheck.
So the absolute golden rule here is everything in your motivation answer must point inward. It has to be about your dedication to the craft, the complexity of the problems you want to solve, and your methodology. It is about your capability, not their catering.
Well said.
Okay, that leads us to the second dial, which I think is where candidates experience the most friction. Towards to versus away from motivation. The book calls this the reframe principle.
This is where we separate the amateurs from the masters. We touched on this with the cold open. Moving towards an opportunity means you are actively seeking growth, a new level of enterprise complexity, or a specific methodological challenge.
Right.
Running away from a situation means you are fleeing a bad boss, a stagnant role, a toxic culture, or an impending layoff.
But here is where the friction is, and it feels like a cruel irony. Away from motivations are often 100% legitimate. They are the literal truth.
Oh, absolutely.
If my boss is a micromanager who texts me at 2 a.m. on a Sunday demanding status updates, and my company hasn't given anyone a raise in 3 years, I am running away, and I am entirely justified in doing so. So what am I supposed to do? Sit in the interview room, look them in the eye, and just lie to them. Reframing feels a little bit like corporate gaslighting.
I hear that resistance a lot, and it is a totally fair reaction, but no, you absolutely do not lie. You reframe, and those are two very distinct psychological processes.
Explain the functional difference between lying and reframing, because the line feels blurry.
It comes down to understanding the purpose of the interview room. An interview is not a therapy session. The hiring manager is not a priest. They do not need your confessions about your workplace trauma. They are not equipped to process your frustration. They just need to know if you can execute their projects. Reframing means you take your genuine truthful away from reality, the fact that you need to leave, and you find the towards to version of that exact same truth that focuses on your capability, not your grievance.
Okay, let's look at the specific examples from the book to make this concrete.
Yeah, let's do example 1.
So the away from truth in the candidate's head is, I have been here for 6 years, I am completely stagnant, I'm bored out of my mind, and there is nowhere for me to get promoted. That is the away from reality. How do we functionally reframe that without lying?
The towards to reframe of that exact same reality is, I have built an incredibly deep foundation of delivery experience over the last 6 years, and I am now ready to apply that foundational knowledge at a higher level of complexity.
Oh, wow. That is clean.
Do you see the mechanism of the shift? It is the exact same chronological and factual truth. You've been there 6 years and you are ready for the next thing. You aren't lying.
Right, you didn't invent anything.
No. But one version sounds like a victim escaping a trap, complaining about boredom. The other version sounds like a seasoned expert intentionally scaling their career architecture. You remove the emotion and highlight the utility.
That is brilliant. Let's do example 2. The away from version is, this is my dream company. I absolutely hate my current company because it's a disorganized mess. Please rescue me. Which we know from earlier is pedestaling and desperate.
Very desperate.
What is the towards to reframe for someone who genuinely, deeply loves the target company and wants out of their current mess?
The towards to reframe here utilizes peer evaluation. You strip out the desperation and the fantasy language. You say something like, I have actually been following your external transformation program in the European market for the last 18 months.
Setting up that you did your research.
Right. Then you add, the way your organization is handling that initiative aligns perfectly with the agile scaling methodology I have been developing in my current role. So when this position opened up, it felt like a natural next step to deploy my methodology rather than just a lateral career move.
That is so powerful. It doesn't sound arrogant, but it completely levels the playing field. It sounds like two peers evaluating a mutual business opportunity.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a core philosophy that the book drives home relentlessly. And I want you, the listener, to really internalize this right now. High-value candidates do not need this job. They are choosing it.
Need versus choice. It is the fundamental difference in interview energy, and it changes the entire atmosphere of the room. Need communicates scarcity. It tells the interviewer, I don't have other options. I will take whatever you give me. I will accept a lower salary. I will work weekends. Just please hire me.
And choice?
Choice communicates abundance. It communicates that you have professional boundaries. It says, I have highly valuable, market-tested skills. I could go to 3 different companies right now and solve their problems, but I am actively evaluating you to see if your organization is the best vehicle for the next phase of my career trajectory. Right. Paradoxically, hiring managers desperately want the person who doesn't need them, because a person who chooses you is reliable, intentional, and confident. A person who needs you is just desperate, and desperation is unpredictable.
Okay, so we know we need to tune the dials to internal and towards too. But how do we actually construct the communication style? How do we sequence the words?
This is where we need a framework.
Right. The book introduces a framework here that comes from completely outside the world of project management. It is Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. It is from a TED Talk that has something like 60 million views. So many of you might be familiar with it in a leadership context, but applying it to an interview is fascinating.
It is a phenomenal, elegant framework for this exact problem. Sinek explains that most people and most corporations communicate from the outside in. They start by telling you what they do. Then, maybe, if they have time, they explain how they do it. And very rarely, if ever, do they get around to explaining the core driver, why they do it.
But the whole point of a motivation question, literally, the definition of the word motivation, is that the interviewer is explicitly asking for your why. Why do you want to be here?
Exactly.
And yet, because of nerves or conditioning, the vast majority of candidates still answer with a robotic list of their what. Let me read a classic what first answer from the book. Listen to how this sounds.
Let's hear it.
Quote, I am a project manager with 10 years of experience. I have my PMP and my Scrum Master certifications. I currently manage software deployments. I use Jira and MS Project, and I am looking for a new role that offers more career growth.
And how do you feel as a hiring manager after hearing that?
Completely numb. My eyes are glazing over is a forgettable commodity. I have interviewed 100 people this month, and 99 of them sounded exactly like that. It's just a verbal reading of a resume summary.
Exactly. It's a list of features, not a compelling narrative. Now, let's look at the exact same candidate with the exact same resume, the exact same certifications, but we flip the communication architecture. We start at the center of the golden circle. We start with the why.
Okay, here is the why first version. Listen to the difference in gravity here. Quote, I believe that a company's ability to execute is its single greatest competitive advantage. Not its ideas, not its marketing, but its relentless execution.
Strong start.
Right. That core belief is why I chose to become a project management professional 15 years ago. And it is why I am so passionate about the discipline today. When I saw this role and the complexity of the portfolio you are managing, I realized I am looking for the right environment to do work that actually matters at scale.
The contrast is staggering. The first answer was a commodity listing its specs. Second answer is a profound statement of conviction.
Yeah, it really is.
When you start with why, you transform yourself from a commodity, just another interchangeable PM with a PMP, into an expert with rare conviction. And hiring managers remember conviction. It cuts through the noise of 100 other interviews.
I believe execution is a company's greatest advantage. That gives me chills because it elevates the profession. It says, I'm not just a task tracker, I am the engine of your competitive advantage.
That's powerful.
If you want to see more of this, because constructing these why first statements takes real thought, the complete written system for this series has a massive section entirely dedicated to motivation answers. It has word-for-word examples across multiple different, highly specific scenarios.
Which is so helpful.
It is. Whether you are executing a career pivot from operations to PM, whether you are returning to the workforce after a 3-year gap to raise kids, or if you are transitioning from military service to corporate, all of it is in there. So grab the guide using the link in the description before your next interview. Having those why first templates to study and adapt is an absolute game changer.
It really is, because it gives you the vocabulary of leadership. And once you have established your why using the Golden Circle, you need a structural tool to deliver it across time. This is where we introduce the timeline tool.
I love this part of the book because it highlights such a funny, glaring irony about our profession. Project managers are literal, certified experts at managing timelines. We speak in dependencies and critical paths.
We do.
But when it comes to managing our own careers, we seem to think in shockingly short horizons. We literally just think about escaping the current job to get to the very next job.
It is a massive professional blind spot. You have to realize that seniority is often measured in time horizons. Junior people think in terms of weeks, months, or maybe their next immediate paycheck or title bump.
Yeah.
Senior leaders think in terms of multi-year trajectories and strategic architecture.
Oh, looking further out.
Exactly. If you want to sound senior, credible, and high value in an interview, your motivation answer needs to demonstrate that longer time horizon. You cannot just talk about what you want today.
So we use the past, present, future structure to map that horizon. Let me read the timeline example from the book. Listen to how this candidate positions their career as a deliberate build.
Go for it.
Quote, I started as a project coordinator about 8 years ago. I spent the first 4 years deliberately building my core delivery capability and ensuring my foundation in Agile and Waterfall was rock solid. Right now, in my present role, I am managing mid-size implementations and leading small pods, but my trajectory has always been deliberately pointed toward enterprise-level complexity and program management. That is why this specific role makes sense to me right now. I am not looking to make a quick jump for a title. I am looking for the exact right environment where I can anchor down, integrate, and build for the next 5 years.
Let's dissect the strategic brilliance of what just happened in that paragraph. First, it shows a highly logical, intentional upward trajectory. You didn't just stumble into this interview room because a recruiter messaged you on a Tuesday. You navigated here over 8 years.
Yeah, there was a plan.
Second, you are taking absolute ownership of your own professional development. You are the architect of your career, not a passenger.
And it proves staying power.
Which is huge.
Yes. Turnover is a hiring manager's ultimate nightmare. They do not want to spend 6 to 9 months training you, onboarding you, introducing you to hostile stakeholders just for you to leave for a 10% pay raise somewhere else a year from now.
That's devastating for a project.
It is. By explicitly framing your past foundation, your present capability, and your future 5-year intention, you completely eliminate their fear of a short tenure. And notice what was completely absent from that meticulously crafted answer.
No brand pedestaling, no. This is my dream. No negative talk track about the current job.
No salary talk. No desperation. It positions the application entirely as a calculated, deliberate, mutual choice. Okay, here is where things get really fascinating, because we're about to move into the case studies to see this in action. But before we look at the exact words, we have to talk about a crucial prerequisite. The book is very clear that you can have the perfect script, but if you deliver it wrong, it still fails.
Delivery is everything.
We have to talk about how things are said. The book calls this the 3V moment, and it deals with a psychological concept called attachment energy.
This is the invisible killer in interviews. This is where even the most rigorously prepared, highly intelligent candidates sabotage themselves. You can have the most perfectly crafted towards to internally motivated, timeline-structured why first answer in the world.
Right.
But if you walk into the room vibrating with eager energy, shifting in your seat, speaking too fast, leaning over the table, and practically panting with excitement, you are telegraphing intense attachment.
And attachment lowers perceived value. But why? Isn't enthusiasm a good thing? Like, don't they want someone who's excited?
Enthusiasm for the craft is a good thing. Attachment to the outcome is a bad thing. It goes right back to needing versus choosing. If you are overly attached to the outcome of this specific interview, meaning you have tied your financial security or your ego to getting this one specific job, you are broadcasting that you need it.
Oh, I see.
You become highly compliant, overly agreeable, and you lose your authority as a peer.
Okay, I understand the theory. But how do we functionally do this? What is the functional mechanism to drop attachment when the mortgage is on the line, your current job is terrible, and you really desperately want this job. It is really hard to just turn off your nervous system.
You cannot just tell yourself to calm down. That never works.
Never.
The trick is a cognitive reframe, a mental time shift. Before you walk into the room or log onto the Zoom call, you must mentally accept the worst possible outcome as if it has already occurred in the past.
What do you mean?
I want you to close your eyes and genuinely imagine that the interview actually took place yesterday and it was a complete, unmitigated disaster. You bombed the technical questions, you spilled coffee on your shirt, it is over, you unequivocally did not get the job. Grieve it for 2 minutes.
Okay, that sounds incredibly depressing right before an interview. Why would I do that?
Stick with the psychology of it. If it is already over and you already failed yesterday, then the conversation you are about to have today is just a low-stakes coffee chat.
Oh, well.
The pressure of the outcome is gone because the outcome is already zero. You are just meeting with these people today to discuss what you learned, to talk about project management philosophies, and to be genuinely curious about their portfolio.
That is a massive mental hack.
It completely strips the pressure of the future away. It removes the attachment energy, which paradoxically allows you to be calm, grounded, authoritative, and genuinely curious.
That makes total sense. It is about balancing deep interest in the work without desperate attachment to the job offer. And I will say, balancing that, showing you care deeply about PM work without showing you are desperate to escape your current life, takes real, out-loud practice. It is not natural to suppress your fight or flight response.
No, it isn't.
This is, again, exactly what those 4 free coaching sessions are for. You can practice your delivery, your pacing, your tone, and your body language out loud with someone who has sat on the other side of the hiring table. They can tell you if you are vibrating with attachment energy or if you are speaking too fast before it costs you a 6-figure job.
That feedback is priceless.
All right, let's flow right into the core of this deep dive, the 3 case studies. We're going to do side-by-side analysis, failing answer versus strong answer for the exact same question. We will see all these frameworks applied.
Let's do it.
Case study 1, the classic, inevitable question. Why did you apply for this role? Here's the failing answer. Quote, I am exploring outside opportunities right now. You are the leader in the industry, and honestly, it would be the best employer to work for. Plus, the office is only a 10-minute walk from my house, which is great.
4 sentences. 4 massive value destroyers. Let's dissect the wreckage here.
Please do.
Exploring outside opportunities is away from framing. It shows no deliberate direction, just a desire to wander away from the current state. Leader in the industry is heavy pedestaling. It puts them above you. Best employer is desperate flattery.
And the commute.
Ending with a 10-minute walk is pure, unadulterated external motivation focused entirely on your personal comfort, not the work.
It's a disaster on every front. Now, let's look at the strong answer to the exact same question. Quote, I saw the role through a LinkedIn recommendation. I've actually been tracking your European expansion for a while because it mirrors some challenges I'm facing now. I wasn't actively searching, but the portfolio requirements matched my background perfectly. I know I have a slight gap in the specific regulatory requirements you need for the German market, but my broader compliance experience makes me confident I can close that gap quickly.
Look at the density of high-value signals in that answer. Not actively searching is the ultimate flex of a candidate with abundance and options.
Yeah, you're choosing them.
Tracking their expansion shows genuine peer-level interest based on business evaluation, not pedestaling.
But the part I love is acknowledging the gap. The slightly imperfect fit principle. Why is it so powerful to admit a weakness during a motivation question?
Because desperate candidates pretend to be perfect at absolutely everything. They will say yes to any requirement. High-value candidates confidently own their minor gaps because they know their core value, their ability to learn and execute, is secure.
Right. They aren't threatened by a gap.
Exactly. By admitting you don't know the German regulatory market perfectly, you make every other claim in your answer profoundly credible. It shows immense self-awareness and honesty.
Okay, let's pivot to a slightly different angle. What happens when they zoom out? When they start asking about the company and start asking about the profession itself? Case study 2. Why did you become a project manager in the first place? Here's the failing answer. Quote, well, my friends were PMs and my parents really wanted me to go into business rather than the arts, so it just made sense. Plus, I'm pretty organized.
Immediate elimination. This candidate is drifting through their own life. There is zero internal motivation. Their entire career path was dictated by external peer pressure and parental expectations.
Yeah, it's very passive.
If they drifted into the profession simply because it was easy and their friends were doing it, they will drift right out of the company the moment the job gets difficult and the stakeholders start screaming.
Let's hear the strong answer, focusing on internal motivation. Quote, I realized early on that I love navigating highly ambiguous problems. I love the challenge of leading teams without having direct HR authority over them, having to use influence instead of mandates. I view project management as essentially getting a new, complex job every 6 months, but building a continuous foundation of expertise along the way. It was a very deliberate choice for me.
It is night and day. This candidate actively chose the profession. They didn't drift. They are internally motivated by the specific difficult realities of the role, ambiguity, matrix management, leading without authority.
They embrace the hard stuff.
Exactly. They exude confidence because they embrace the hardest parts of the job. You want to hire someone who wants to be in the trenches for the right reasons.
Absolutely. Okay, case study 3. This one trips up everyone. The dreaded time horizon question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Failing answer. Quote, I eventually want to start my own consulting practice, and I really need some solid client-facing experience here first to help me get there.
This is astonishing, but people actually say this with a straight face because they think it sounds ambitious. You have just looked a hiring manager in the eye and told them that you plan to use their company as a paid training ground, extract their proprietary client methodologies, and then leave to become their direct competitor in the marketplace.
Wow.
Immediate, hard elimination.
It is the ultimate taker answer. You are literally telling them you're going to take their clients. Okay, the strong answer. Quote, if I look back at my 4-year journey, it has been about building a foundation in tactical delivery. Now, with my PMP maintenance, I am aiming directly for senior portfolio leadership. I want to spend the next 5 years going deeper into enterprise complexity within an organization, not just wider. I want to be managing programs, not just projects.
Notice what this does. It perfectly utilizes the timeline tool, past, present, future. But most importantly, it addresses the core fear, staying power.
Right.
It tells the hiring manager, if you invest your time and money in me, I am going to stay here and grow within the parameters of this profession and this company. It completely de-risks the hire while still sounding incredibly ambitious.
Okay, as we near the end of this deep dive, we are going to walk through the 7 failure principles. This is basically your ultimate pre-interview checklist to completely sanitize your motivation answers. And we are just going to list them. I want to make sure we understand the mechanism behind each one.
Ready when you are.
Principle 1, the negative talk track.
Absolutely never say anything negative about your current employer, your boss, or your team. Keep it entirely positive and future-focused. Even if they ask you a behavioral question about a conflict, frame it around the process breakdown, not the personality defect of your coworker.
That's a great tip. Principle 2, external motivation. Strip out any mention of salary, health perks, brand prestige, or your commute. Every motivation you vocalize must point inward toward the work itself. I know we beat this to death earlier, but it is so crucial. Don't be a taker.
Couldn't agree more. Principle 3, away from framing. Ban words like stagnant, toxic, bored, or undervalued from your vocabulary. Those words make you a victim. Find the towards to version of whatever your truth is. You aren't bored. You are ready for a higher level of complexity.
Principle 4, pedestaling the company. Do not call them your dream company or fawn over them as the unquestioned leader. Evaluate them as a peer. When you put them on a pedestal, you force them to look down on you.
Very true. Principle 5, attachment or wanting it too much. You must show genuine interest in the portfolio, but never desperation for the job offer. Master that mental trick to drop the attachment energy. Grieve the loss of the job before you even log on to the call.
Principle 6, entrepreneurial ambitions. Keep your side hustles, your real estate dreams, and your future consulting plans entirely out of the interview room. But let me push back on this one. We work in tech. A lot of tech companies say they want founders and self-starters. Aren't we giving outdated advice by telling people to hide their side hustles?
It is a great question, but you have to distinguish between marketing copy and hiring reality. A company's careers page might say, we want founders, but the specific hiring manager who needs a PM to execute a grueling 9-month ERP migration does not want a founder.
They don't?
No, they want a dedicated executor. If you talk about your side hustle, the hiring manager immediately assumes that your mental energy is split. They assume that at 5 p.m., you check out of their project to go work on your app. Keep it out of the room. You want them to believe their portfolio is your primary professional focus.
That makes perfect sense. The marketing says one thing, the risk-averse manager feels another. Principle 7, peer pressure as motivation. Never frame your career choices around what your mentor told you to do, what your parents wanted, or what your friends are doing. Own your choices entirely.
Exactly. You must be the active architect of your career, not a passive participant.
Those 7 principles are absolute lifesavers. And again, all 7 of them, plus the word-for-word templates for those really tricky, highly specific scenarios, like explaining a 2-year career gap without sounding defensive or pivoting from a totally different industry, are all in the guide. The link is in the description. It is designed to be read the night before your interview to get your head in the exact right strategic space.
Highly recommend it.
Let's do a quick map recap of the journey we just took, because we covered a massive amount of psychological ground today. We started by exposing the hidden danger of Domain 2, the illusion that motivation questions are a casual break, when really they are a constant high-stakes broadcast of your value and leverage. We diagnosed the 3 failing cold open answers and exposed the subtext of complacency, pedestaling, and negativity.
We covered a lot.
We did. We broke down the internal versus external dials to avoid looking like a taker and explored the incredible power of the reframe principle to functionally shift from away from complaining to ambition without lying. We applied Simon Sinek's golden circle to ensure you start with your why and avoid sounding like a commodity PM. We mapped out your career horizon using the past, present, future timeline tool. We analyzed 3 case studies side by side, addressed the critical need to drop attachment energy by grieving the job in advance, and finished by debating the 7 failure principles.
It is a completely different way to approach the interview. And this perfectly sets the stage for our next deep dive. Because Episode 7 tackles Domain 3. This is where we transition from talking about your internal motivation to talking about your actual tactical work. And here is the massive teaser. Domain 3 is what separates the candidates who merely manage projects from the candidates who truly own them.
That is going to be huge. Most candidates think they know how to describe what they do all day. I update the Jira board, I run the stand-up, but they fundamentally fail to demonstrate end-to-end ownership in a way that sounds senior, credible, and authoritative. That is exactly what we are fixing next time.
Can't wait.
So here is my genuine ask to you. Please hit subscribe on the channel. I am not saying that as a throwaway YouTube cliche just to get numbers up. This series, these deep dives, they build on each other structurally. The frameworks we discussed in Domain 1 compound with the psychological positioning in Domain 2, and they will lock in perfectly with the tactical execution of Domain 3. You want this entire architecture waiting for you in your feed whenever that next big opportunity lands.
And remember the resources available to you. The guide in the description has everything we talked about in one highly tactical document. And if your career story is messy, and let's be honest, most real careers are messy, take advantage of those 4 free coaching sessions. Let an expert help you navigate your specific landmines before you step on them in front of a hiring manager.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about frameworks, reframing truth, managing signals, and hiding attachment. It can almost feel like we are over-engineering human interaction. It raises a fascinating philosophical question. In a modern interview, are we losing our authenticity by performing these highly curated versions of ourselves? Or is the ultimate professional skill actually the ability to curate reality? To take all the messy, emotional, chaotic truths of your career and package them into a strategic narrative that inspires confidence and gets the job done.
That is the ultimate question of professional communication. You aren't hiding who you are presenting the most effective version of who you are for the specific context of the room. Do not wing it.
Exactly. Because whether you curate it or not, who you are is always broadcasting. Make sure it is a signal worth tuning into. See you next time on The Deep Dive.